The soft hum of the city outside my apartment window barely registered as I sat at my mahogany desk, adjusting the cuffs of my silk blouse. It was another Thursday morning in Manhattan, and from the outside, my life looked polished, controlled, perfect. Emails pinged, my coffee steamed gently in its ceramic mug, and the soft click of my heels on the hardwood floor echoed like a metronome of success. But under this calm exterior, a memory lingered, sharp, uninvited, impossible to ignore. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I hesitated, a flicker of unease pricking at my composure. Then I opened it. Remember the service entrance? Meet me at Lincoln High. I froze. The words transported me back to a day I had buried deep, the humiliation of being made to sneak in the back door while my sister's kids and their friends waved from the front. My chest tightened, heat rising to my cheeks even now, almost 15 years later. And yet, underneath the sting, there was a surge of defiance, a quiet pride that had kept me going all these years. I sipped my coffee, its bitter warmth grounding me, and glanced at the skyline. I was no longer the girl who had slipped through the back like a shadow. But the past has a way of barging in, and it seemed determined to demand attention. I tapped the screen, typing a reply before second-guessing. I'll be there. I remember the day like it was yesterday, even though I was barely 17, caught between adolescence and the harsh lessons of family dynamics. The air at Lincoln High felt heavier that morning, the scent of polished floors and cafeteria food mingling in a way that made my stomach twist. My sister's kids had insisted on walking me to school, so you don't get lost, they claimed, but I knew it wasn't concern. It was control, a way to humiliate me in front of everyone. When we arrived, the principal gave them a knowing nod, and before I could protest, I was directed toward the service entrance. The smaller, dimly lit door tucked behind the gym, away from the polished main entry, was my shame incarnate. My sister's youngest snickered as I passed, and I heard the whispered comments of their friends trailing behind me. My chest tightened. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped my books. I swallowed hard, tasting the bitterness of embarrassment, and fought the urge to run. The hallway smelled of disinfectant and old sneakers, every echo of my footsteps amplifying the humiliation. I felt the sting of tears threatening to escape, but I remembered my grandmother's words from a month ago, pressed into my palm as she handed me a small, worn leather journal. No one can dictate your worth. Write your path, and one day, they'll see you walking it on your terms. Clutching that journal, I made a promise to myself as I stepped into that dim corridor. I would not let anyone define me, not my sister, her children, nor the school that laughed silently with them. I would find my own way. That day, I realized resilience isn't loud. It isn't a grand declaration. It's the quiet decision to rise, to nurture your potential, and to plant seeds of independence even while your world tells you otherwise. And in that moment, amid the echoes of my humiliation, I began plotting a life where no one would ever make me use a back door again. After that day, I threw myself into every opportunity one could find. I still remember the first night I stayed up until 3 a.m., hunched over a secondhand laptop in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, teaching myself the basics of graphic design. The city outside never slept, and neither could I, not when every pixel I adjusted felt like a small rebellion against the humiliation I had endured. My apartment smelled faintly of instant noodles and coffee, the latter my constant companion through long nights and self-doubt. I met Clara through an online forum for young creatives, a seasoned designer who had a reputation for spotting raw talent. She became my mentor, insisting that I could be more than the girl forced to sneak through a back door. They don't get to see your worth, she said, her voice firm but kind. So make them wish they had. I clung to that advice, repeating it like a mantra when clients rejected me or when my hands trembled over unfamiliar software. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A small boutique wanted a logo redesign, impressed by a sample I'd hesitantly uploaded online. The joy of receiving that first paycheck. I remember peeling the envelope, fingers sticky with leftover coffee, heart hammering, was indescribable. It wasn't just money, It was validation, proof that I could exist on my own terms. Night after night, I refined my craft, balancing freelance work with short courses, all while keeping my family in the dark. My sister assumed I was still struggling. My mother occasionally asked about college debt, and I smiled through each inquiry, careful not to reveal the empire quietly taking shape. I posted minimal updates on social media, photos of coffee cups and city sunsets, never the awards, never the promotions. It became my secret garden, a world apart where I thrived away from judgment. There were setbacks too, clients who vanished without payment, nights when the glow of the laptop felt like a prison, and moments when I doubted my own worth. But I reminded myself of that leather journal, of the promise I had made in a dim hallway years ago. Write your path. Every new client, every glowing review, every late-night project completed became a sentence, a paragraph, a chapter of the life I was authoring for myself. By the time I turned 25, I had built a boutique creative studio with a modest team, a growing client list, and a reputation in Manhattan as a rising force in design. The girl who once slipped through the service entrance no longer existed. She had been replaced by a woman who owned her talent, her space, and her story, and the world would soon learn that lesson, whether they were ready or not. The invitation came unexpectedly, wrapped in a carefully worded email from my sister. "We'd love to visit your studio this Thursday. Kids are excited to see where you work." My chest tightened for a moment. Old memories of sneers and whispered laughter threatened to surface, but I let a slow smile form. This was my moment, the moment to rewrite the narrative, to reclaim the dignity they had tried to strip away years ago. Thursday arrived, crisp and bright. I opened the sleek glass doors of my Manhattan studio, the polished wood floors gleaming under the natural light, abstract art adorning the walls, and my team bustling with quiet efficiency. Every detail, from the elegant gold-accented desks to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, reflected the life I had meticulously built, piece by piece, away from their judgment. They walked in, wide-eyed. My sister's kids, now taller than me in some ways, froze at the threshold, as if expecting a cramped, forgotten office with hand-me-down furniture. The principal from my high school stood stiffly beside them, awkwardly clearing his throat. I noticed the small shifts in posture, the subtle recoils, the realization dawning slowly across their faces. They hadn't expected this. I gestured toward the space, letting my team continue their work without acknowledging the intrusion. I watched their eyes trace the minimalist gallery wall, linger on the award shelf, and finally settle on the large, custom piece of digital artwork I had designed myself, a bold declaration of who I had become. Impressive, my sister's voice faltered, a mixture of awe and guilt tugging at her words. The kids shuffled nervously, avoiding my gaze. I let the silence stretch just long enough, letting them stew in the weight of expectation versus reality. Then I spoke, my voice calm, measured, and deliberate. "This is my studio. I own it. Every client, every project, every late night, it's all mine. I am not the girl you made use the service entrance. I am not someone to dismiss or humiliate. I am the woman who built herself while you doubted she could." The principal's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, but no words came, just a stammering attempt at apology. My sister's hands fidgeted, her children now staring, finally seeing me. Not the sibling they mocked, not the cousin they embarrassed, but the person I had become. They had expected a struggling, timid version of me. Instead, they met a woman whose confidence radiated from every carefully curated detail of her environment. A woman whose success was not gifted, borrowed, or inherited, but forged in quiet determination, sweat, and stubborn resilience. I let the revelation settle. Let it linger. And when their silence became unbearable, I added softly, almost conversationally, "I didn't need your permission. I didn't need your support. And I certainly didn't need to prove anything to you, but now you know." I watched disbelief, shame, awe, and a touch of remorse play across their faces. The back door they had forced me through all those years ago no longer existed, figuratively or literally. I had built my own doors, open for opportunity, closed to humiliation, and designed in my own image. The room was quiet, heavy with the realization that the power balance had shifted, and it was mine now. I leaned against the sleek edge of my desk, letting my gaze travel across my sister and her children, the principal, even the lingering echoes of their former judgment. I had spent years building not just success, but control over my own narrative. Now I could choose how much of that to share, and under what terms. "I will help," I said finally, letting the words hang in the air like a carefully weighed promise. "But things must change." My sister blinked, uncertainty flickering across her face. I continued, my voice steady but firm, each condition measured and deliberate. "No more belittling anyone, no more assuming someone else's worth is less than your own. You will treat people, including yourselves, with respect, not entitlement. And you will take responsibility for your actions, especially the way you speak to others." I turned to her kids, now silent, their previous arrogance replaced by cautious curiosity. "You are allowed to be proud, but not at someone else's expense. If you want access to opportunities, you must earn them. Work hard, learn, grow, and make mistakes responsibly. Success is not a gift, it is a choice." The principal shifted uncomfortably. I didn't spare him a wordless glance. "And as for you," I said, calm but direct, "apologies are not enough. Policies must change. Students should never be humiliated or dismissed quietly. Respect should be the standard, not the exception." I paused, letting my words sink in. The air felt taut, charged with anticipation and the strange relief of truth finally spoken. Compassion and firmness mingled in my tone. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I was simply asserting the boundaries I had learned to value over the years, the boundaries that had protected me when no one else would. Finally, I softened slightly, offering a bridge rather than a wall. "I am willing to guide you, to mentor you, but only if you are ready to change. I will not support old patterns, excuses, or toxic habits. Consider this an opportunity, an invitation to grow rather than a condemnation." The room remained still, the weight of my conditions sinking in. I could feel the subtle shift, the realization that respect, accountability, and effort were no longer optional. The girl who had been forced through the service entrance had become a woman who built doors of her own, and anyone who wanted to step inside would have to meet her standards. For the first time in years, I noticed a flicker of hope behind the hesitation in my sister's eyes, a tentative willingness in her children. They were being given a chance, but only because I chose to extend it on my terms. And in that quiet moment, I realized something profound. Power isn't about punishment. It's about setting boundaries, teaching lessons, and showing that true respect is earned, not demanded. I had finally reclaimed it all. Weeks passed after that confrontation, and the change, though gradual, was unmistakable. My sister no longer rolled her eyes at my accomplishments, but asked questions, genuinely curious, seeking guidance instead of judgment. Her kids, once sneering and dismissive, started showing interest in their own ambitions, experimenting with art, volunteering, and even apologizing for moments they didn't fully understand at first. Even the principal quietly implemented small policy changes, ensuring no student would face the humiliation I had endured. I watched these transformations with a mixture of relief and quiet pride. The satisfaction wasn't just in seeing them grow, it was in knowing that my journey, my resilience, had set the standard. The leather journal, worn and tattered from years of handling, still sat on my desk. I opened it, tracing the familiar lines of advice my grandmother had pressed into my hands. "Write your path, and one day, they'll see you walking it on your terms." I smiled, letting the memory wash over me. The girl who had stumbled through the service entrance, trembling with embarrassment, was gone. In her place was a woman who had not only survived but flourished, creating her own doors, her own rules, and her own story. A woman who had learned that forgiveness and guidance could coexist with strength and accountability. The sun streamed through the studio windows that morning, casting a golden glow across the sleek surfaces, the awards, the carefully curated artwork, reminders of the battles fought, the nights spent working, and the life painstakingly built. I sipped my coffee, noting the faint aroma, feeling grounded and complete in a way that had once seemed impossible. And as I watched my sister's children sketch in a corner of my studio, tentative but eager, I realized the truth that had carried me through every hardship. Power isn't measured by wealth or accolades. It's measured by the courage to define your worth and the grace to help others rise, if they're willing. I closed the journal gently, setting it beside my laptop, and whispered to no one in particular. I am no longer the girl who entered through the back. I am the woman who built the front doors, and I hold the keys. The past had visited, tried to shake me, but in the end, it had only highlighted the strength I had always carried. The doors I created were open, but on my terms, and that was freedom unlike anything else I had ever known. Bottom of form.